Let's just start by saying that African Americans as a people are fundamentally important to understanding and defining who America is or what America is. African American studies is getting at where America is right now as a country. If there's a problem in the United States, it's reflected in the African American community. And if there's a problem in the African American community, it tends to be reflected in the United States.
I think African American studies as a discipline is really important, especially right now, this cultural moment. We see a lot of people taking into consideration the African American story, what it means to be a descendant of Africans in America and identify as a Black person. And it's a really important lens through which we can look at history and get a different story than we typically get in elementary school, middle school, those sorts of things.
Most students say, oh, I've taken American history, so I should know African American history. Well, to their surprise, when they take an African American history, they said, I didn't know this about the African background, where precisely, and the conditions under which people were enslaved from West and Central Africa.
But more than just the contribution that African Americans made, and up until the time of the American Industrial Revolution, they were really the fundamental source of wealth, both in their persons as slaves and in their activities as workers. Beyond that, though, the status of African Americans is the fundamental litmus test for what American society is supposed to be.
Our nation, the USA, especially is tied to African Americans, and just with our struggle to get equal rights in this country. And I think that shows a lot about our culture and definitely a lot about Black people in general. And studying, kind of some of the tactics that we used throughout history and just how we were able to, still be progressive and still strive and persevere through a lot of different challenges that we face in America is definitely something that needs to be studied.
You cannot understand how race worked, factored this in, and understand it today, all the ramifications we are seeing of that history today, without really looking at that history systematically and looking at the various experiences.
Percentage-wise, African American populations, the impact on the culture is just as great as it is in an area like the Caribbean, where African descended people make up as much as 90% of the population. And so this is an interesting question in its own right. And I think that's another very important component to consider with regards to African American studies, which is understanding why it is that this particular population group has such a distinctiveness within our larger culture.